420 hours. That's how much time I've spent in this game. It's safe to say that I truly love Jurassic World Evolution, and I have loved it from the start. The game has been massively improved on since launch, but of course, playing it as much as I have, the shortcomings of the game are apparent, and there are still several aspects of the game that I would have liked to see changed. In this video, I want to discuss improvements to Jurassic World Evolution that would have made the game perfect in my opinion. These are not things I'm still expecting to see in updates or DLCs, but rather what Jurassic World Evolution could have been like and what I think Jurassic World Evolution 2 should be like, if Frontier and the world at large cater to my personal preferences. My points are organized in 4 categories: decorative, purely aesthetic stuff to play around with; park building, improvements to building and customizing our parks as a whole and individual exhibits; gameplay, some small and some large functions and features that improve gameplay; and dinosaurs, changes I would have liked to see made to the creatures that populate our parks. Now, before I start rambling, let me know in the comments what would have made Evolution the perfect game for you, and then afterwards we can compare notes. So here we go. The longevity of a game like this relies mostly on the player's ability to keep making unique parks, and we'd need tools for that. What should have been part of the game and should absolutely be part of a sequel are decorative elements like fountains, fossils, statues, and classic Jurassic Park style gates. As a fan of the original Zoo Tycoon and Zoo Tycoon 2, as well as Planet Coaster, I know how much fun there is to be had with this option for creativity. In Planet Coaster, I especially like the placeable lights, which you can recolor. It creates such a stunning effect at night and has a huge impact on the atmosphere. Now, the amount of choices you get in Planet Coaster is a bit much for a game like Jurassic World Evolution, where you want the dinosaurs to be the main focus. It can actually be daunting and exhausting to build everything piece by piece. But even half of the items that were available in Zoo Tycoon would have been a literal game changer for Jurassic World Evolution. Serving both a decorative and functional purpose, signs would have been amazing to have in the game. The yellow signs with black skulls that appeared in the original Jurassic Park would be perfect to accompany our exhibits. But I would have also wanted customizable signs that I remember from Roller Coaster Tycoon, with which you could create no-go areas for your guests. I think we all have sections in our park that are supposed to be staff only. Yet we have tourists walking around among the scientists and even getting into buildings that you'd think wouldn't be open to the public. Another functional but also good-looking addition: benches, as well as trash bins. It would have made our guests feel more realistic to see them rest once in a while, and I would have enjoyed creating outdoor seating areas by the bars and restaurants. Given my name, it really shouldn't surprise you that I'd want more colors to go crazy with. I like making needlessly complicated path designs and public squares, mostly because in the game we actually have, it's one of the only things you can do in terms of building a unique and beautiful park. But even if you don't go crazy with path design like I do, a terracotta or brick path, as well as other path types, would allow for more variety. The 3 paths we currently have are not just limited in combining them the way I do, but also for distinguishing between different areas within your parks, or differentiating between parks based on the theme of the park itself. I'm not promoting the inclusion of bright paths like a yellow brick road, but a couple of muted tones that, would fit with the look of the game. Getting into more general building aspects of the game, but also sticking with paths a little longer, Guests should be able to see the dinosaurs from the paths. It makes no sense that a dinosaur could be standing right on the other side of a light steel fence, and according to the game mechanics, this doesn't count towards visibility. How many exhibits in your nearby zoo are only viewable through specific buildings? Having a visibility area on either side of the path would be more realistic and eliminate the absolute need for galleries and platforms. Frontier could have still programmed the guests to prioritize the viewing attractions and go to them, but also have them be able to see the dinosaurs along the way. As an alternative to fences around the perimeter of an enclosure, I would have loved concrete moats as a barrier between guests and dinosaurs. Deep but narrow moats would be placed the same way the fencing tool currently works in the game. Combined with a viewing distance on paths, this would have created some beautiful, immersive sights for our guests. A management aspect that could have been introduced with concrete moats is having to save guests or dinosaurs that accidentally fall into the moat. Another fence type that I think would have been perfect is an invisible fence. These wouldn't have worked to form the enclosure itself and keep dinosaurs contained, but they would have kept dinosaurs separated within an enclosure and keep the herds spread out in a large exhibit. Right now, an issue I have with expansive exhibits is that the dinosaurs tend to migrate to the same spot and cluster together, when I would have preferred to have the herds more purposefully spread out to give an optimal viewing sequence for tours. Obviously, the ability for the trucks and gyrospheres to go through fences provides kind of a solution to this, but it's not ideal. In the Jurassic World movie, it was introduced that the dinosaurs all have subdermal trackers. Given the map system we have in the game, it's safe to assume our dinosaurs have these implants as well. What the game could have added was a research option to upgrade the tracker with an electric shock to prevent dinosaurs from passing invisible fences. The fences you would lay down using the standard tool, but it would be a wire buried underground, so invisible once you exit the tool. And again, thinking of ways to have these new fences enhance the gameplay as well and to keep us park managers on our toes, it could have been the case that hungry carnivores still sometimes cross the invisible fence into a part of the enclosure where you might keep your defenseless hadrosaurs. One of the many iconic scenes in the movie that started it all is the cow being lifted into the raptor pen to be torn apart. A cow feeder would have been fantastic in the game, either the same way the goat feeder works, or by having a dedicated building that you'd place on the edge of an enclosure, which uses a crane to lift the cow in, just like we saw in the movie. The cow could then walk around until the carnivores caught its scent. The animals wouldn't swallow it whole, but eat from it the same way they eat from a hunted down dinosaur. And similarly, it could have been our task to clean up the remains. Thanks to the amazing new terrain painting tools, we are finally able to create desert and savanna exhibits. What I think would have been great is if we didn't have to add a lake or river to these dry environments, but that dinosaurs could instead drink from a water trough. This is just a small, seemingly insignificant extra option, but I think it would give us that little bit more freedom to create a different looking enclosure. Continuing with my water-related wishes, waterfalls. A fantastic feature would have been if connecting two bodies of water on different levels, simply by dragging the water brush across, would have automatically created a waterfall. In my opinion, waterfalls add a lot of atmosphere to an environment, not in the least because of the thundering sound of crashing water. Moreover, waterfalls regularly appear in the franchise movies and in the inaccessible areas of the in-game maps. They are clearly a natural part of the island's geography. The terrain manipulation in Jurassic World Evolution could have been better. Kauai, where the original movie was shot and which lends itself so well to mimicking a prehistoric looking landscape, has spectacular mountain ranges in excess, and we see those around the perimeter of our buildable areas. Yet the most we can do is raise the ground into a gently sloping hill. If Evolution had been built using the Planet Coaster game engine, we could have done incredible things with the terrain, making actual mountains and steep cliffs cinematic canyons. At a certain incline, the terrain would simply be too steep for dinosaurs to cross, allowing us to create natural barriers to exhibits in the form of rock walls. Additionally, the terrain manipulation in Planet Coaster is so extensive and so detailed, you can even sculpt with it, creating statues that look like they were carved out of the landscape. This kind of spectacular design would have fit well with the Jurassic World franchise. One of my absolute foremost wishes for the sequel is to add elevated pathways, able to cross over water and exhibits. The height of the path would be adjustable, so you could make low bridges across water or high walkways over enclosures. Made all the better, of course, if a guest can actually see the dinosaurs from the path. It would allow beautiful views for our guests and for us as park managers as well. Next point on my list, more trees and more rocks, but without hitboxes limiting their placement. In Planet Coaster, you can create amazing rock formations by building individual boulders on top of each other. This is a feature that would have greatly benefited exhibit design in Jurassic World Evolution. We want spectacular environments in which our dinosaurs look like they belong. Having more rocks and more trees would further help with this. As far as rocks are concerned, we don't just need different shapes, but different colors too. And of course, in terms of trees, a variety of sizes, as well as the addition of pines and redwoods would be amazing. I understand the reasoning behind the current inclusions. These trees look natural in this tropical biome, but everything in Jurassic Park is manufactured, even the plants, as Ellie touches on in the first movie. It might look odd, a pine forest on a tropical island, but that should have been up to us to decide for ourselves. Something a crazy path builder like myself would have appreciated is the simple inclusion of an undo hotkey. It happens so often that I incorrectly place or delete a stretch of path that messes up the design, and trust me, it is not always an easy fix. Sometimes I have to redo an entire section due to the way the paths clip together. Something the general gamer can probably relate to is the frustration of terrain changing in an unwanted way when you place something down. For example, you place a tree by the water's edge and the game decides to recede the water line. Oftentimes, you don't just have to delete that one tree to get the water back to where you want it, but many more trees and rocks that you've carefully placed. I think it would have saved us all some frustration if Ctrl-Z would have worked in those situations. A final building improvement that transitions into my points on function and gameplay is a change to the way the track for the truck tours work. I don't know to what extent a 1993 DLC tour will fill this need I have, but until then I'll say it would have been better if the truck tours could cross tracks, paths, and water. If you could cross tracks, you could make more interesting loops and more easily fit several tours into one enclosure. If you could cross paths, you could have the truck tour the park as a whole. Little warning signs by the path with blinking red lights whenever a truck approaches would have been especially cool. A nice addition would have also been to be able to attach multiple stations to a single track, so guests can get on and off at more than one location. Lastly, if you could cross water, it could make the tours more exciting. And clearly the trucks have no trouble driving through the shallow lakes and rivers. Of course, an actual Cretaceous cruise would have been better still. Now I'm moving on to gameplay improvements. Some small, some large, but all based on my personal gameplay. so probably not all of these will resonate with you. But let me know in the comments what would have made your gameplay easier or just more enjoyable. I have poor sense of direction. Go figure. So when I hop into the Jeep, I have trouble navigating through my own parks, especially in challenge mode where you're building so fast that you have little time to get used to the new layout. Yet you have to rush to the far end of the park before your 40 Struthies die of Campylobacteria. A miniature map in the corner, accessible via hotkey so you can turn it off if you don't need it, might have actually saved some lives in my Jurassic challenges. Nowadays, we have a lot of sandbox settings, but I would have liked just 2 more to make it absolutely perfect: storm frequency and generate storm. With storm frequency, you could crank up the frequency with which a storm appears. The same way you can rush the day-night cycle, you can shorten the time between storms or lengthen it if you want. Generate storm would make a storm appear instantly. This way you can have a storm appear at the perfect time of day or when 2 dinosaurs happen to be fighting, and that would have made for some dramatic screenshots. Personally, after meticulously building a park, I enjoy watching chaos unfold. What I found, however, is that sometimes it takes such a long time for even the first storm to land that most of the dinosaurs have already killed each other and there's not a lot of action going on by the time that twister hits. And that's really disappointing, because a twister would make for some awesome backdrops to dinosaur fighting. Speaking of sandbox settings, turning off fighting should not affect goat hunting. I won't say anything else. We're just going to look at this for a bit. I would have had even more fun as a park manager if my guests felt real. At the very least, they should have a randomly generated name and favorite dinosaur. Individual guests would be clickable the same way the dinosaurs are, with a pop-up containing some information on them. For example, their personal rating of the park, which could be lower if you happen not to have their favorite dinosaur, or when they just went to a viewing gallery and didn't see anything. Staff management seems like it would be an integral part of a park building and management game, but Evolution is kinda light on that. We can buy a couple of extra ranger teams and apply upgrades, but that's it. In a perfect game, staff management would have been a little more akin to that in Planet Coaster. I wouldn't have wanted it to be too hands-on and be so overtasked as manager that I don't have the time to simply enjoy my dinosaurs, but some hiring and firing could have been interesting. The type of personnel you'd need are scientists, entertainers, and security and maintenance personnel. When you're planning on incubating a lot of dinosaurs, you'd need to hire more scientists. Or maybe don't really need to, but the incubations would go faster and with fewer failures if you did. This would have meant a slight rework of the current upgrade system that is in place. Security would patrol, and maintenance would sweep in assigned areas, and entertainers dressed as dinosaurs as well as park guides would amuse and enrich the guests. I've seen requests for an instant incubation option in sandbox mode. What I think would have worked as a realistic alternative to that is the option to purchase dinosaurs from other islands. You wouldn't be pillaging your other parks, but instead the game would pretend that while you're on Nublar, production never stops on your other islands, and you can buy dinosaurs from the islands where you unlock them. Supposedly, the dinosaurs you purchase had just been incubated in the hatchery on one of your other islands. Rather than waiting for the incubation process to complete, a transport chopper would instantly fly into frame to deliver the dinosaur. And speaking of incubating dinosaurs, in an absolutely perfect alternate universe version of Jurassic World Evolution, the game would include models for infant and juvenile individuals of each species. In the creation lab, you determine at which growth stage you'd release a dinosaur into the park. An infant or juvenile would emerge from the lab a little sooner than if you'd wait to release it as a full-grown adult. If you've decided to release the dinosaur as an infant, it would take some time for it to grow into a juvenile and then an adult, so you can enjoy them at their smaller size and use them in a petting zoo, as we saw in Jurassic World the movie. The dinosaurs would transition from one age model to the next only when you haven't selected them, so no awkward growth animation is needed. Personally, I don't feel like natural breeding would be a necessary addition to the game. And with the kind of genetic manipulation going on, even if the dinosaurs would be both male and female, it would be relatively easy to make them infertile, so it's not unrealistic to incorporate in the story. My third and final suggestion for the hatchery would be accurate skin previews using 3D models. This is obviously not an original idea, but I feel like I can't not include it. For a very long time, I was hopeful that skin previews in the creation lab would have been part of one of the updates, but at this point in time, I'm not expecting Frontier to implement it anymore. It would have been so much better, however, and it's something that needs to be a part of the sequel at launch. It happens way too often that I confidently incubate a dinosaur, thinking to myself, I've spent over 400 hours in this game, surely I know what this skin is going to look like, only to then be disappointed during the release animation. The fact that Frontier plays fast and loose with the type of skins, as well as the little colored squares, make it all the more confusing. There is little rhyme or reason left to it. This Albertosaurus has a tundra skin, while tundra is supposed to be green, as we see with most species. This beautiful Muttaburrasaurus is vivid. It's one of my favorite skins in the game, and certainly my favorite skin for the Muttaburrasaurus. This Acrocanthosaurus, with the exact same color scheme, has a jungle skin. It's confusing when it doesn't need to be. 3D models in the incubation lab would solve everything. I have 3 ideas in mind that fall under the category camera. For starters, a first-person guest view, another unoriginal suggestion, but necessary to include. It could have been an addition to capture mode. The camera would lock into place at eye height and you could walk around your own parks to explore it the way your guests would. I would have also loved the ability to share parks on Steam, so we can walk through each other's parks as a guest. I could have really used that type of inspiration. A second feature I would have liked is an addition to the dinosaur camera, namely the ability to lock the camera into place right behind the dinosaur. That way, we can sort of come along for the ride while it roams around. I think that would have been very relaxing to watch. The third improvement relating to the camera goes back to capture mode. Capture mode would have been even better with a number of dedicated hotkeys. Of course, a hotkey to access capture mode itself, but also hotkeys to switch between slow, paused, and normal when you've hidden the UI. I don't have that much to say about this. The islands for the campaign are fine. The size is a restriction that actually adds some measure of difficulty that is needed, since the missions aren't particularly challenging. It makes Penna a beautifully frustrating but refreshing puzzle. However, in Sandbox, we just want to build to our heart's content, and the map is too limiting. Ideally, we would have had multiple, large maps on Isla Nublar, all Sandbox. That way, we would have had variety in the shapes to the maps, which provide inspiration for the kind of park you're going to build, and it wouldn't feel like the borders of the map are closing in on you. I think there should have been one map at least 4 times as large as Isla Nublar currently is. My final points regard the dinosaurs themselves. Graphically, I think they are unrivaled. I have few complaints about the designs, and personally I find none of the flaws to be insufferable. But still, they could have been a little better. In my opinion, The dinosaurs would have benefited from more skin variety, not just the dull palette swaps that we mostly got, and I don't think that's a controversial point to make. I would have wanted to see more different patterning. I also would have preferred a better balance of naturalistic, quote unquote, and bright colors. That way, the color of the dinosaurs has a bigger impact on the park as a whole. Whether or not it's realistic is beside the point. We don't know what color the dinosaurs had, but it doesn't even matter. As Dr. Wu emphasizes, the animals in the park were created as attractions, and colorful dinosaurs would surely sell more tickets. Some of the skin designs that are being previewed for Prehistoric Kingdom make me jealous, because I'd want those for Evolution. I would have especially loved something spectacular for the ceratopsids. Frontier could save themselves a lot of work on skin design if modding was allowed and was made to be an easily accessible feature, where we could download custom skins from a Steam forum. The lack of variety in animations has only recently started to bother me. Frontier has made beautiful and exciting animations for the dinosaurs, just not enough. I believe that if Evolution had had a longer development cycle, they would have created more. As it is, the animations are too repetitive. More animations would have made the dinosaurs more realistic and more interesting to watch. There probably should have been 3 times as many animations, 3 times as many ways for large carnivores to kill each other, for small carnivores to kill each other, for small carnivores to kill guests, and so on and so forth. Extra animations would have also covered extra behaviors, most importantly, pack hunting and resting. And the Dilophosaurus should have been able to effectively use its venom in combat and while hunting. My second to last point for what would have made a perfect Jurassic World Evolution is the inclusion of the mosasaur. It's not a dinosaur, of course, but it was a key player in the movie that brought this franchise back to life. I could argue it was the star attraction of the park in Jurassic World, given how much of an investment that stadium must have been, and how packed with spectators it was, despite supposedly diminishing guest numbers. If the game engine had supported it from the start, it would have been fairly easy to include this marine reptile. It wouldn't necessarily require the building of a tank. A deep water brush would have been sufficient. Perhaps we wouldn't have even been able to see it while it was far below the surface, adding an element of mystery, the same way we can't see our dinosaurs when they wander into thick forest. But we would be able to see it swim just below the surface, or see it breach to feed. A viewing stadium would have allowed our guests and ourselves a view above and below the surface. Seeing the mosasaur approach the glass through murky water, maybe even bump into it at times, would have been exciting. I'm going to end this video the exact same way I started it, by addressing the clipping issues that plague this iteration of the game. It's very anticlimactic, but although seemingly minor, it is my main source of frustration. I still hope it's something that gets fixed, but if not, it's something that should not occur in the sequel. I don't even understand why this issue has persisted for as long as it has. As guests and the Jeeps show, the game has a decent system in place to prevent clipping. You can't drive a Jeep through a crowd or a dinosaur, so why can the dinosaurs simply wander in and out of each other? Even rocks and trees in this game need their personal space. It's just the animals that don't. It breaks immersion for me whenever I'm spending time enjoying the view of the dinosaurs in this absolutely gorgeous game, and it's really just a shame. We have reached the end of my very long list. My throat feels really scratchy and I truly cannot stand the sound of my own voice any longer. If you've made it this far, congratulations and thank you very much. Now, to wrap up this video, I just want to remind you that the things I said in this video are just things that would have made the game perfect for me, and that disclaimer is threefold. 1. This is all based on personal preference. 2. Just because it's not perfect doesn't mean I don't love the game. And 3. This is all wishful thinking of what could have been, not a list of what I still want to see or expect to see in Evolution. I think Frontier has done a great job with this game, and I am so excited to see what they do with the sequel. Of course, optimistically assuming that there will be a Jurassic World Evolution 2. I'd love to know what would have made the game perfect for you, or what you would like to see for a possible sequel. Thanks so much for watching, and consider leaving a like or subscribing, or giving a video suggestion or request in the comments. I could really use your feedback to figure out what you'd like to see from me. Let's get the most out of this game together. Thanks again, and until next time, enjoy the game.